Alright people, Thor Love and Thunder has arrived. Thor 4 is finally here. I got to check it out. And we got to talk about this movie. Of course, if you haven't seen the film yet, definitely make sure you go check out my non-spoiler review. And actually, honestly, even if you have seen the film, go check out that non-spoiler review as well. Because in that video, I go way more in depth on, my thoughts specifically on the characters and like the overall tone of the film. And it's more of a, standard review for the movie. Whereas this is our spoiler review, where we are going in depth on all the big spoilery stuff that happened and people that showed up and stuff that was set up and all that stuff in this video, the spoiler review. So if you haven't seen the film, really bad idea to watch this movie. Definitely make sure to go check it out. It's a great movie. I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun. I absolutely loved it. So check it out, preserve the experience, all that good stuff, and then come back to this video so we can talk about spoilers. So we'll start off with like the smaller stuff and then build our way up throughout the video with probably starting off the most ridiculous thing that probably nobody else is going to mention in any of their reviews, but I'm pretty happy about, is the fact that Thor's stupid helmet that like we saw him wearing in the trailers, like when he has a moment where he's like, Jane, that great moment of their meeting, and I'm not a fan of that helmet. It just looks so stupid and so bad. So I'm so happy that I was getting worried about nothing because he wore that for literally like 5 seconds in the movie, because that was just, it was really tacky looking. Like, it was just not a good looking helmet. Really, the only reason they had it in there was pretty much just to sell merchandise and action figures and stuff, which, understandable, but just wanted to throw it out there. Super glad that was only in there for that one scene. But now let's talk cameos. So a lot of people have been saying like, oh, don't get hyped up for any big cameos in this movie or anything like that. But, I mean, if you're a fan of these Thor movies and if you watched all these Thor movies, there's some pretty big cameos in this film. Like, for example, we get to see Darcy show up here. Of course, Kat Dennings returning. We just saw her in WandaVision last year, but to see her reunite with the Thor world here, of course, makes sense because, she's Jane Foster's best friend pretty much. So it makes sense that she would show up here. Of course, also Stellan Skarsgård as Dr. Eric Selvig. Great to see him back. Obviously, it's a little unfortunate that it was just through like a Zoom call, video call type thing. But hey, I'll take what I can get. I mean, we've been getting some cool references to him since we last saw him in Age of Ultron, I think. So it's been a while. I mean, we just got a name drop of him in one of the recent episodes of Ms. Marvel. So it was great to see him appear in this film. And also, when Jane visits New Asgard, we get some really cool cameos there as well. Like, for example, we have the return of the Asgard actors. Of course, in Thor Ragnarok, we had the scene where we had Matt Damon as Loki, and I believe Luke Hemsworth as Thor, and they were putting on a play of, the death of Loki in Thor Ragnarok and all that stuff, reenacting the scene from Thor the Dark World. We also had Sam Neill back as Odin. This time, they're reenacting the scene from Thor Ragnarok, where Hela destroys Thor's hammer. So we have Melissa McCarthy in here as Hela. That was hilarious. I mean, it was leaked like over a year ago due to set photos, so it wasn't like a big surprise, but still, honestly, just hilarious. I love Melissa McCarthy. She's awesome. But speaking of awesome, you know who's awesome? Darryl. Now, some of you might not know who Darryl is, but for those that do, and actually do not, there were some Marvel one-shots released with Thor. I don't remember like which movies they were with. I'm assuming there was one with Thor the Dark World. I feel like there was two with Thor, and then there was one released with Thor Ragnarok with the Grand Master, and Darryl was just like, it was basically like an SNL sketch, but with like Thor being roommates with like this normal civilian guy named Darryl. And so Darryl shows up here. He's a tour guide at New Asgard. That was honestly hilarious and also confirms that those are canon. So that was great. I love that. And then the final big cameo during the movie that I want to talk about is Lady Sif. Jamie Alexander is back as Lady Sif here. We already knew she was going to be in the film, but actually seeing her here, obviously she doesn't have a huge role, but I do think it was pretty funny how like when we found her, like she was missing her arm. I mean, it is kind of disappointed like she's missing an arm now, but it was funny with the joke of like, oh, maybe your arm is in Valhalla and all that stuff. She was wearing a super comics accurate outfit there as well. And you see at the end of the movie, she is now back in New Asgard and she is training Axel, which, speaking of Axel, let's talk about Axel. So we have the son of Heimdall. This was something that was really surprising me, but made a lot of sense at the same time. Because remember, when we originally got the casting of this actor in the movie, we originally thought that maybe it would be Heimdall reincarnated and it would be a younger version of Heimdall, but it's actually Heimdall's son. So that, I think, is something really, really cool that I wasn't expecting, especially the fact that he has the all-seeing eyes like his father Heimdall did as well. That really came into play in the movie. So I really enjoyed that and am excited to see more of this character in the future. He kind of played a leadership role here with the other children, which, speaking of that, the whole scene with Thor doing the little oath and giving them all powers and, like, you know, empowering their weapons, and even that little girl with their stuffed animal, that was adorable. Like, honestly, that was a really cool moment. I enjoyed that. But as for our main characters, let's talk about them. So first we have Korg. Korg didn't play a huge role in this movie. I definitely preferred him in Thor Ragnarok. I was missing his relationship with Meek. Meek pretty much had a cameo in here as well, and pretty much everything we saw from Meek was in the trailer, so that was kind of disappointing. But as for Korg himself, obviously Taika Waititi is funny as always. And I was heartbroken when Zeus threw the Thunderbolt through him, and I thought they actually killed off Korg, and I was super upset about that. But then he ended up being a face for the rest of the movie, which I wasn't a fan of that. It was kind of just weird and a little too much forced comedy. But I did also like at the end of the film, he kind of gets his happy ending with he finds himself a man, he's got a mate, and they're having a baby. I also love just that kind of development on the Cronin culture. Speaking of that, also the Cronin god, that was a great cameo as well. But the fact that, like, all Cronins are male, like it's an all-male species, and this is something I actually found out about a couple days ago. So I was kind of thinking that they might feature this in the film, and they did, and so that's how it works. It's really cool story how, like, you know, they just hold hands by a lava pool, and then they just turn into a baby, and then they regrow their hands, and it's adorable. It's honestly really, really cool. So you got Korg, he found his man at the end of the movie. It's basically Korg with a mustache, but still awesome, still really cool. I'm happy for them. But then we also have Valkyrie, another LGBTQ plus character in this film, who really kind of got done dirty. Like, she didn't really do much here. She was very underutilized. Like, she wasn't the badass king like we thought she was going to be. She was kind of lazy and was just, like, ignoring all her responsibilities, which makes sense. Like, you know, she's a Valkyrie. She wants to be in battle and all that stuff. But also the fact that, like, we were promised that she was going to be looking for a queen here. That never happened. I mean, we got a quick scene with her, like, you know, kissing the hand of one of Zeus's ladies, but that was it. So hopefully we get more with her in the future. Hopefully get a relationship. I know a lot of people have been coming up with the idea of maybe Valkyrie and Captain Marvel. I personally would love that. I think that'd be really cool to see. So we'll see if that ends up happening. But then there's Jane Foster, the mighty Thor. Natalie Portman, of course, returning to reprise her role in this movie, battling cancer. I really enjoyed that, especially the fact that whenever she let go of Mjolnir, she turned back into the weak, frail Jane Foster. I mean, like, if she didn't have hair, that'd be, like, an even more impactful part of it as well. But I still like the transitions with what they had in the film. It was just really, really awesome and really devastating at the end with how she died. But that comes back to the romance and the connection, and just the chemistry between her and Chris Hemsworth is amazing. So I love the rom-com elements of this film between those two, them finally getting back together, especially at the end, how, like, you know, she was left in the hospital. She kind of came to the conclusion that, like, all right, fine, I'll stay here, but Thor, you better come back to me. But then she could sense him getting beat up, and then Mjolnir was just, like, right there. So then she made the sacrifice. She went into battle. It was really sad. It was really heartbreaking, but obviously we see how things go in the post-credit scenes, so she's probably coming back, but still awesome. I loved her story in this movie. Another character I loved the story of in this film was Christian Bale as Gore the God Butcher. Christian Bale was acting his butt off in this film. It was just amazing. I mean, you really see him bring his acting chops to the table here. And, you know, the only problem with his character is that he just needed more screen time, because, you know, you don't really get to see much of him in this movie, and it would have been nice to at least see him do some more god butchering, because all we saw of that was in the first scene of the movie, which, by the way, was a great start to the movie. That super arrogant god, he was like, all right, I'm just gonna grab the necrosword, and boom, there you go, you're dead. Like, that was awesome. That was a great start to the film. I just wish we saw him butchering more gods. And we do know that originally there was going to be cameos of Jeff Goldblum's Grandmaster, and also Peter Dinklage as Eitri in there. he was going to murder them. So I'm glad he didn't murder them, but still would have been cool if he was going around and you actually got to see him murdering some of these other gods. And the whole thing with Eternity, I think, was really interesting as well, because I didn't expect that character to come into play here at all. But that's, of course, an entity from the comics. And Eternity is really interesting that they kind of use it as like a wishing well type thing here, especially that whole world that we're sent into once he like unlocks the gate, and the whole temple with like statues of the Watcher and Lady Death and the Living Tribunal. That was some really cool stuff, and I just love the inclusion of Eternity in this movie. But of course, at the end of this film, when it comes to Eternity, Gorr makes his wish. He brings his daughter back to life. He, of course, ends up dying. He makes a sacrifice. Both he and Jane die. And then that leaves just Thor and Gorr's daughter. And this was the big ending that I had no idea was coming. It was a huge surprise, but I love it so much because Thor's a dad now. And I love that because early in the movie when Korg was talking about, like, he literally said, like, oh, I bet Thor would be a great dad. And then I started thinking during that moment, like, you know what? I bet he would. I honestly wish we could see that, but it's not looking like it's going to be too good for him and Jane. But now he can be a father, and a single father at that, which obviously is really sad and depressing, but it's still awesome. Like, Thor is a dad now. Like, that's so cool. I think that's a really cool new element to add to the story, because through the whole movie, he was looking for purpose. Well, here's his purpose. He has a daughter. He has a child to take responsibility of now. I think that's just a really awesome way to take the story now, especially the fact that now they're known as Love and Thunder. That was a great tie back to the name of the film, the title, and also the fact that Love is actually played by Chris Hemsworth's real life daughter. So that's another cool element as well. And Love's introduction here alongside possibly Axel could be some setup towards the Young Avengers. We know the Young Avengers coming to the MCU. We got Eli Bradley as Patriot from the Falcon Winter Soldier. We got Kid Loki from the Loki Disney Plus series. We got Billy and Tommy, aka Speed and Wiccan from WandaVision and Multiverse Madness. We also got Kate Bishop in here. We got Ironheart on the way. We got Ms. Marvel. We got Stature coming. And so, you know, when it comes to the Young Avengers, there's never been a younger Thor character. But now you have that. You have not only Thor's daughter, but also Heimdall's son. Both very powerful characters, especially, like, I mean, Love basically has the powers of eternity, which is absolutely insane. So I'd love to see either both or at least one of those characters join the Young Avengers in the MCU. I think that'd be pretty great to see. But yeah, Thor Love and Thunder, like, there was just a lot of cool stuff going on here. I love the cameos. I love the storylines. The comedy did go a little overboard at times, but for the most part, I love this film. And I cannot wait to see what happens in Thor 5, because there was definitely a lot set up here for the future of Thor as a character and this franchise in general. We're getting Thor 5. I mean, it hasn't been officially announced yet. Maybe we'll get an announcement at San Diego Comic-Con later this month. But there's definitely some big stuff set up here with his daughter, now Hercules, possibly the Jane Foster stuff as well. Which, speaking of that, the post-credit scenes I'm going to be talking about in separate videos, because I put up a poll on the channel and you guys voted yourselves that you want those in separate videos. So your wish is granted. So we'll go into those in separate videos. Stay tuned for those. Possibly later today, possibly tomorrow. We'll have to wait and see. But for now, guys, what did you think about Thor Love and Thunder? Let me know all your spoiler thoughts on this movie in the comments below, and where you think things are going to go in Thor 5. So guys, thanks for watching. Please drop a like if you enjoyed this video, and hit the subscribe button so I can keep you up to date on everything goes on in the Marvel life.